Hello and welcome to this episode of Integrity Matters with Turnitin. We are very honoured to host Professor Liz Johnson, the DVC Education from Deakin University. Liz, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
I usually like to start these with a question around how did you decide to start working in education? What led you to educational sector?
Oh, that's an interesting question and a long story, of course, as they often are. So my background's in agricultural science to begin with, of all things, and then biochemistry. I started life as a biochemistry academic, but found that I really enjoyed teaching and did a lot of teaching, particularly when my children were small. Then as I came back to work full-time, I found that leading teaching was really rewarding in the outcomes for students, but also in the outcomes for staff that were working with them.
Excellent. And can you tell me a little bit more about your current role as a DVC education at Deakin University, and what's your current area of focus, or your passion project?
So I started as DVC education at Deakin University this year, so I'm relatively new to the role. But the portfolio includes responsibility for the quality of learning and teaching at the university, as well as innovation projects and supporting excellence in learning and teaching. In that space, my focus this year has really been about building our strategy around student success and retention, and thinking carefully about what it is that we can do to support students to succeed best in their study. We find that success is very tightly linked to retention, and so if we can help students to succeed, then they'll be better able to get to their goals, whatever their goals may be. In parallel to that, Deakin's got a rather high proportion of its learners who study online. We call it studying in the cloud. And those students are typically busy. They're choosing, many of them are choosing cloud learning, online learning, because they've got lots of other commitments in their life. So we need to support them in different ways, more diverse ways, and to think about what the learning journey is like for them. So those are two big areas of focus. I guess the third one for me is really about student graduate outcomes and about employability when they leave us. Most students choose to start tertiary study because they're looking for a new job, a change in career, something new in their working life. And so we need to support them to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And just touching on some of your previous experience as well, because you were a Pro-Vice Chancellor of Teaching and Learning at Deakin as well.
That's right.
So from the previous, let's say 4 or 5 years, could you tell me a little bit about, some of your most successful projects?
Well, we had a lot of good things happening, which were really interesting. So part of that was a big curriculum reform project where we were looking at building capability amongst our teaching teams so that they could design and deliver teaching better. And we did that in 2 steps. The first step was really about getting curriculum structures right, so aligning what we wanted the students to learn, learning outcomes, alongside assessment, so they were all pointing in the same direction, and then creating the learning activities which would help students to get to that level of achievement that we were seeking. That's a really common approach to curriculum now. Constructive alignment, backwards design, they fit together very nicely. So there's a lot of that work. More recently, we've been really focusing on what good teaching and learning looks like for those cloud students, for those online students. And can we construct online learning which is as rich, as engaging, as supported as conventional face-to-face teaching?
Of course. And if we're talking about successes, what would be the biggest challenge that you are facing in achieving your goals?
Okay, so doing things at scale is really always hard, and most Australian universities are big by comparison with international universities. Doing things well at scale is really hard. I taught for 28, 30 years before I was consumed by these leadership commitments. And it's easy to be innovative and creative and work collaboratively with your students when you've just got a small group of 10 or 15 students with you. Nobody has a class like that anymore, where tutorial sizes are 30, 40, 50 students. Class sizes are 200, 300, 400, up to 1,000 students. So how do you make that learning experience still relevant and personal for those students and meet their needs where they are? And that's the aim, is to meet the learner where they are, where they're coming from, and tailor their learning experience to help them grow as best they can.
Sure. With this teaching and learning at scale, and when we talk about teaching and learning overall, how does academic integrity come into play with teaching and learning?
So academic integrity is core to the way universities work. It's core to our research, and it's core to our learning and teaching. For students who haven't been in a university before, it's often a bit of a weird concept. So in the world outside universities, copying and retweeting and liking and sharing material is actually the norm. People do it all the time. So when students come to us, they're faced with a different situation where those kinds of behaviours now have different rules. And so that's quite a different thing for students to grasp. So there's a conceptual place to start with. So why do we care so much about academic integrity? And of course, it's about acknowledging the work of others and adequately critiquing it. So you can't, if you don't know where stuff has come from and you don't understand the limits of its provenance, it's hard to use it well. So for us, academic integrity is really core to the way we do research and the way we do learning and teaching, but we have to bring students with us to understand why that's important. Now, the thing that they understand quite easily is fairness. So students understand the idea of cheating without too much trouble at all, and they're often quite hard on each other, on those who they think are cheating or obtaining unfair advantage. In reality, a lot of the people who are not adhering to the rules are doing it either because they don't know how to use the rules properly or because they're in a difficult, bad situation. So there's a lot of work we need to do as institutions and as teachers to help them be in a situation where they can cope using the rules that we've explained to them and that they can buy into. So that's a long-winded answer, but academic integrity is difficult because it's a new concept to the students that we're dealing with, and because it's complicated. If you can break it up into the simple ideas that students can get hold of, then you're closer to getting people to share those values with you.
And aside of breaking academic integrity into simple concepts, several concepts, what other strategies do you have of instilling academic integrity into your students? So, for starters, we've got to look at it as an educative process. So we start with the assumption that students can learn, and that if we give them sufficient opportunities, they'll learn iteratively. So it should be educative. We have to start early, and we have to be consistent and reinforce those messages so that it becomes normal when they're working with us to work in a way which we would regard as having academic integrity. That's not, rules are important, but it's not about rules, it's about understanding why and making it easy to apply the standards that we share. So, explain the rules, do it often, explain it in the context that the student's going to use it, and show them why it matters. So show them why academic integrity makes a difference to researchers, why it makes a difference to the way knowledge moves around the globe, and why it makes a difference to how we trust knowledge. This is a really great way of dealing with it. I wanted to shift focus a little bit because you mentioned that your background is in biochemistry, so
That's
STEM.
Right. Yep.
So with an increased focus on STEM in recent years, What role do you see educational technology play in developing students' outcomes and success?
Oh, that's a big question. So educational technologies are tools. They're tools to an end. But learners and teachers work in an increasingly digital world. They operate online and they expect to operate online. Doesn't mean that they're digitally literate in the sense that they understand how all those systems work, but we all use them daily. We do. It's the world that we live in. So learning is no different, and it needs to be centred in the world in which we operate. So from that point of view, it absolutely needs to be digitally literate. But there is much more than that. So educational technologies offer us lots of advantages. So in my own university, which has a lot of online learning, educational technologies are a way of supporting students who are not in the classroom with us. So we do a lot of, dare I say, video conference. Now, video conference is not the answer to anything, but being able to chat with your tutor in an asynchronous way, that is, you send a message, they send something back to you, that's a familiar space for students to work in because they do it online all the time. So bringing that into a learning environment, that makes you're taking a familiar process and applying it to learning. So there are lots of educational technologies which are need to be gathered together into a supportive environment. And that's part of my job actually, is to find new technologies, to help staff develop how they're going to work with them, and to work with students and staff to embed them into a supportive learning environment.
And do you find that possibly in STEM in particular, it's any harder or any easier to implement technologies?
I'm not sure that it's harder or easier. Different disciplines have different conventions and different histories of how they learn and assess, and they all need to change as digital tools change. The thing about STEM is, because science is a global enterprise, often the practice of science is also global, and so there are some quite nice tools for people to work together at distance. So you can do experiments remotely, or you can be part of a team that's looking at big data sets, or you can look at citizen science, which is the collection of data from many different sites and bringing it together. So there are kind of affordances and interesting opportunities that come out for STEM disciplines because of the way they work. But I could do that again, go through that again for you for business and law, for example. So the whole movement around financial technologies, fintech, that's all based on the idea of digital technologies that people share. And again, we need to bring that into our universities because that's how people work.
That's for sure. And keeping with the theme, but connecting it with academic integrity specifically.
Yes.
Is instilling academic integrity principles in STEM subjects and STEM students any different to any other area of study?
In principle, no. In practice, there are some specific challenges, but they're all, it's a matter of playing with the disciplines and working out what's right for them. So one of the challenges that I've had in the past is working with computer scientists who are concerned about plagiarism, for example, in coding. And they worry that their options for self-expression in coding are limited, and so you'll get a lot of copycat. This is also an issue for solutions in mathematics, for example. But when you talk to academics about it, they'll say that there are signature traits or signature expressions that people use either in their notes about the methodology that they've used or in their referencing, where did this idea come from. So academic integrity does translate across disciplines. You've just got to find the format that it sits in. Excellent.
This has been very informative. Thank you again for joining us.
Oh, we're at the end. Oh my goodness.
And thank you for watching this episode of Integrity Matters with Turnitin. Bye-bye.